Hi, I have a great question from Lee who asks, this year I'm focusing on visibility and in general telling my story. I'm running into some blocks though, in that I simply don't feel like my story is worth telling. Without getting all long winded, I grew up in a very happy home, parents who taught me I could be anything and do anything I ever dreamed of doing, and that's essentially what I've done. There's no adversity, there's no pivotal turning moment, there's no rock bottom, nothing that I feel others can relate to and say, oh my God, she really gets me. So, how can I share my story in a way that's compelling and true? That is a great question, Lee. And if you too are wondering how to find your story and tell it in a compelling way so that it attracts your tribe, then this episode is for you. Hey, I'm Salma Jaffrey, and you are watching Content Marketing Tips, the show to watch for weekly authentic marketing advice. So, how are you going to find your story? Let's talk about entrepreneurs whose stories we often hear, right? So let's take Elon Musk, for example. Now, his story is of a really turbulent childhood in South Africa, and then how he formed all of his companies, how he developed an electric model car that's super famous now, and how he plans to send the first people to Mars. And so his story is very compelling. It's very diverse. It has lots of ebbs and flows and high points and low points. Let's look at another famous entrepreneur, Steve Jobs. So, of course, he started with migrant parents from Syria, and how he got fired from his own company, how he started Apple, got fired, how he came back to Apple. So there, again, like a lot of pivots and turns and ups and downs in his story. All right, so let's look at some online entrepreneurs. For example, Lewis Howes, and in this Forbes article talks about how he went from sleeping on his sister's couch to running a 6- and 7-figure business. And, you know, it's a story about triumphs, it's a story about hardships, it's a story about struggle. And so there are lots of opposing points in that story, which makes it very compelling. Or let's take the story of Sofia Amorosa, who is the founder of Nasty Gal, and how she started with very, very difficult circumstances in her childhood, and how she built up her business from eBay, and now it's a multi-million-dollar business, and she's on the list of, successful, super rich, wealthy entrepreneurs. And so if you look at all of these stories, what they have in common is that they all have struggle, they all have hardships, they all have poverty, they all have riches, they all have strength, they all have persistence, they all have all of these common factors that are very compelling human emotions that talk about how you go from difficult circumstances to finally being a successful entrepreneur. And what your question is what if I don't have that same struggle? What if my story just doesn't have those ebbs and flows, those highs and lows? Then how do I come across? How do I be relatable? What story should I be telling? And do I even have a story that's worth telling? Well, here's the good news, and not even good, great news. The great news is you do have a story. Your struggle, the thing that you have described right now, Lee, is your story. That is a struggle that not just you, but a lot of people face. Your struggle right now is that you think you are boring, that you're uninteresting, and why should anyone pay attention to boring old me? That is a very compelling starting point. And guess what? Not just you, but millions of people feel this exact same way. What makes me so amazing? What makes me interesting? That is something that's called in psychology as a limiting belief, right? A limiting belief is something that holds you back. And in this case, your limiting belief is a feeling that you're not good enough, that maybe you're not worthy of this attention. And so when you limit yourself that way, then you don't know how to ask for that attention in a way that is attractive. So John Bates runs a program for aspiring TED and TEDx speakers. And one of his concepts is to help people discover their story by finding their superhero origins. And yeah, by superhero, I really do mean the caped comic characters that are saving the world. That story. So how do you find what your superhero origin story is? I have 5 steps for you to discover your story and tell it compellingly. Identify what makes you passionate. So what is it about you? What topics drive you to massive engagement? So if you're sitting in a social circle, what topics are you most likely to be talking to people about? What is the stuff that catches your interest? And what's the stuff that riles you up, rouses you from apathy, and gets you going and gets you all excited and talkative, and you feel like you have something to say? So find what you are most passionate about and start from there. Look where you spend the most amount of your time. So what are you doing in your 24 hours, in your daytime hours? What are the kind of books that you like to read? What are the shows that you like to watch? How do you spend the majority of your productive time? What are the tasks that get you all excited and you want to spend time on them? Those are the tasks that are going to tell you what you really want to devote all your time to. And that is going to be your topic of interest that you want to talk about in your story. Look at where you spend a lot of your money. So apart from bills and expenses, where do you spend money on things that are your interests or your hobbies or things that you like to spend money on? Is it maybe on travel? Is it maybe on collecting miniature figurines? Is it on finding healthy recipes and buying cool ingredients? What do you spend your money on? Because that will tell you where your interests lie. And once you know where your interests lie, then those are the topics that are great to build your story upon, and in fact, great to build a business upon. Be transparent about your struggles. So in moments of tough times, what did you do? What kind of uncertainty did you feel? What kind of struggles did you face? How many choices did you have? How many choices you didn't have? Look at all of those factors and determine, how did you feel at that time? How did you feel while going through those struggles? Those are the things that are going to make excellent points to expand upon when you decide to tell your story. Discover your aha moment. This is actually how I discovered my story. So I got a marketing degree and I worked in various corporations in a marketing role, but I was really disillusioned with how marketing was and how textbook marketing had been taught to me. And it wasn't until I stumbled upon a blog, which was so helpful. It made me do my work better and it made me purchase that product, that I realized that a blog has the power to do amazing kinds of marketing. And then I realized that that particular blog was so helpful, it was so encouraging, it was so supportive, it was so engaging, and it was marketing. And that's the kind of marketing that I wanted to do. And so when I stumbled upon content marketing as being this helpful way of marketing, as opposed to the marketing that I actually studied in school, that became my aha moment to find what I love to do and what I think is my origin story about how I got into this line of business. And that is what, drives me to understand that marketing doesn't have to be spammy and sleazy, but it can be super helpful and relationship building and just amazing for the person who is selling something and for the person who is buying that something. And so that's how my superhero origin story started. And that's the story that defines how I started my business. And so really, it's all about, if you put all these 5 points together and spend some time thinking it, go ahead, write it down even, make notes about this. And that's how you're going to find what is so compelling about your thoughts, your struggles, your process, your business ideas, and all of that put together makes your compelling story. So Lee, I hope that these points give you something to think about and that you're able to put together your story, because the world needs to hear what you have to say. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you did, go ahead, like it, comment, subscribe, and don't forget to subscribe on my email list. salmajaffrey.com/subscribe is where you need to go. And when you do so, you're going to get a free blog promotion checklist from me that's going to show you 25 ways of authentically promoting your content. See you next week on Content Marketing Tips. But I don't want to be like Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg or Steve Jobs. I just want to be me. I can't even identify with these amazing stories. I mean, maybe someday we'll all get there, but I just want to be me.